He is Senior Advisor at the Directorate General for Energy at the European Commission, where he coordinates relations with, amongst others, Norway as part of the European Economic Area. TG Energy develops and supports the implementation of the Commission's policies on energy, naturally enough, such as investing in clean energy, making energy affordable for all, and ensuring access to secure and diversified energy supplies. And just 1 week ago, the EU Commission presented its first initiatives to accelerate investment in clean energy solutions, increase resilience, and reduce energy prices. So the question is, are these initiatives powerful enough to boost Europe's competitiveness in the energy sector and to continue the continent's decarbonization efforts at the same time? Now, despite busy days and turbulent times, Mr. Siemers has taken the trip from Brussels to be with us here today, which we truly appreciate. It's therefore with great pleasure that we welcome Haitze Siemers to the podium. The floor is all yours.
Good morning, and very happy to be here in Trondheim. First time here, a very nice place to visit, and just flying in here, you can see how important nature is for us as human beings. When you live in Brussels, it's not the same thing at all. Huh? You live in the city, and it's I spare you the details. Anyways, to kick off, Madam State Secretary, dear participants, also those online, I'm very happy to have been invited here to speak about this really complicated topic of energy transition and energy security. We had a nice concert last night, which was on an organ, as you may know, in the cathedral here in Trondheim, where two of my favorite musicians were on scene. So I couldn't fail to mention that, both Bach and Leonard Cohen. Reminder, I think, really how important it is to also take a step back from the constant crisis management that we live in, and to see what is the bigger perspective. What is it that we're actually working on? Where do we want to go as human society and as human economy and as people living on this planet? So, it was a very welcome moment to kind of take a breath. Energy security and energy transition. Security, but whether it's economic or energy, whatever it is, cannot be imagined without energy. That's the first point. I think that's important for us to keep in mind. Energy security is inextricably linked to the energy transition. Also a very important point, I think, for us to keep in mind, and we all, in a way, know this. Energy determines how secure we are. Without energy, our economy stops, our capability to defend ourselves stops, our life as we know it stops. The events in the Middle East today remind us, even though here in Europe things are still sort of under control, but not elsewhere in the world, as you will have seen in the news, of the very painful experience in 2022. But the situation, I think, is also a little bit different today from our first experiences in terms of oil shock. And I'm not only talking about 2022. Think about the oil shock in the 1970s. Contrary to what happened then, when, like a junkie, we went straight back to the injection of the drug, nowadays we are really in a completely different phase of where we work energy system-wise. And this is because one of the things that we've very much come to realize is that energy security means not getting into energy dependencies and dealing with energy dependencies, which is one of the reasons why we launched RePower EU, which both kicked off a next phase in energy transition in Europe, as you're aware, but also which now has set the very clear objective of getting completely rid of Russian gas by 2028. And as a consequence as well, we are now in a far better situation than we were in 2022, when, as you mentioned indeed, the reliable energy supplier that Norway is came to our rescue and is now indeed supplying 30% of our natural gas, and thank God for that. We are in a far better situation, and so my first point really is that energy security means managing dependencies. A second aspect of energy security, though, is about reducing dependencies and, in particular, increasing competitiveness. And this means moving to an energy system that is independent from external sources, which is really what we are also looking at in terms of energy transition in the European Union. To developing homegrown energy, which reduces the capacity or the risk of disruptions, and also strengthens the competitiveness of the European economy, under the assumption that renewables and a transitioned energy system reduces energy costs. And energy costs, of course, is one of the big things that affects competitiveness of the European economy today. So this means really renewables deployment, strengthening grid capacity, strengthening grid integration, and it means really decarbonizing the industry, but giving them the means to do so competitively. A third part of energy security, of course, links it with economic security. The two are two sides of the same coin, as you mentioned as well. Our supply chains, critical raw materials, are essential for the economy itself, for the modern economy that we are working on, that we are building, but they're also essential for what underpins the economy in terms of energy system, for wind turbines, solar panels, batteries, hydrogen technologies, grid technology. So this is again why the link between the various initiatives that we're taking, RePower to start with, to the Clean Industrial Deal, linked to the Net Zero Industrial Act and the Industrial Accelerator Act are so important. All of them parts of the puzzle trying to make a decarbonized and modern industrial system work and reduce the dependencies not only on energy, but also in terms of supply chains and the raw materials that we need. Then the next aspect is security of energy itself. You mentioned it, infrastructure security, whether it's pipelines, substations, grids, and undersea cables is essential. And you can see here the connection to physical security, which really means defense. Infrastructure protection and cybersecurity are crucial to ensure that our energy system is safe as well as secure. Which brings me to my fifth point. I think at least it's the fifth point. Defense, military, and armed forces need energy, lots of energy, including in particular liquid fuels. We therefore have ongoing and strengthened cooperation with NATO to find the best possible approaches to bring energy security to NATO assets. And we are putting together plans and necessary instruments to ensure that the energy supply is stable, not just from a perspective of just pumping more oil into the system, but for example, to working through sustainable aviation fuels and sustainable marine fuels. And there is the more complex part of the energy transition, of course, as well. We know that we are decarbonizing, but we also know that 60% of our energy supply in Europe overall still comes from fossil fuels. And the diversification that we are working on, therefore, in terms of sourcing those fossil fuels remains a very important part of how we work on the security of our energy system. And it also leads to, particularly in situations as today, where people who don't look further than 5 meters ahead say that, but actually what this means is we can't really do the transition because it's too complicated and it's too difficult. I call this, the fossil empire strikes back. But at the end of the day, we really know that there is no other way forward than doing the energy transition. Anything that you see in terms of how the energy transition is working globally shows that it is a train that literally has left the station. The pressure to reduce the so-called cost of transition through simplification or putting under pressure the instruments that we put in place to help industry decarbonize, such as the ETS or the methane regulation, et cetera, is there. But it's something which we all know that if we think very carefully, we need to manage in a direction where these instruments can continue playing their role and can continue supporting the transition as we want it. We have continuously strengthened the part of component of renewables, for example, in the electricity system in Europe. It's now down, the part of fossil fuel is now down to 36%. We get, in the context of these calls for simplification or some instruments that are creating costs for operators, we get a lot of calls from those who have invested in the transition, who tell us actually what we would like is for you to maintain the ETS and the methane regulation as they are, because we have already invested into compliance and we certainly don't want to see that go to waste. We also see that the transition is happening not just in Europe, it's happening elsewhere. If you look what's happening in G20 countries, in developing countries, micro solar grids in parts of Africa, just energy transition partnerships that we've concluded in the global context with countries in Asia and in Africa, the work that is being done on clean transition investment partnerships. Some countries, as you know, completely stopping the imports of electric vehicles, of internal combustion engine vehicles in favor of electric vehicles. So the transition is happening as we speak, and the argument I would make, and which I think we can all share here, is that what's happening currently in the Middle East only reinforces the argument. A couple of caveats still. We have the technological edge now in terms of developing the technologies in the European context, but for how much longer is that the case? Because we know that there is a lot of clean energy being developed in a very, very large country in Asia somewhere. So this is something that is really part of how we are looking at the energy transition route. Now, this is part of why we're looking so carefully as to how do we support our industry's capacity to transition through things like the Industrial Accelerator Act. In any case, whichever it is, my adage usually is in these contexts, we will live in a clean tech world, and we will have those who have energy, who have access to cheap energy, plentiful energy, and they are not the ones who are talking about energy abundance in certain other places. So take your pick. Do we want to swallow the red pill or the blue pill? Our economic security, at the end of the day, depends on our energy security. Our energy security depends on the energy transition. Our climate change management needs the energy transition. So if we think about it, we know what direction we need to go. The question is not really all that open. We are going through crisis, but we know where we need to go, and if we keep at it, we will manage it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.